The first time I realized my children had started planning my life without me, I was standing in a grocery store checkout line, holding a frozen turkey and a box of pecan pie mix. My debit card declined for $43.17. I tried it again. Declined. I pulled out my credit card. Declined. The cashier looked at me the way people sometimes look at older men when technology stops cooperating, half sympathetic and half wondering whether we know what year it is. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from my daughter-in-law, Rachel. We turned off the cards for now. Too many unnecessary purchases lately. Call Mark if you need anything. I read it 3 times. My son had decided a Thanksgiving turkey was an unnecessary purchase. Before I could even call him, another message arrived. Also, please don't drive tonight. Mark is picking up your truck tomorrow. We think it's time. I was 69 years old. I had driven 47 years without a serious accident. I still changed my own oil. I still mowed my own lawn. I still volunteered twice a week at the community food pantry. Yet apparently sometime between Sunday dinner and Tuesday morning, my family had decided I was no longer qualified to buy groceries or own a truck. But the worst part came 5 days later, when I opened Facebook and saw a smiling photograph of my son, his wife, and my grandchildren standing in front of my house beneath the caption, "Big family change is coming." Dad has finally agreed it's time to downsize. So excited to welcome him into our home after the holidays. I had agreed to nothing. My house wasn't for sale. I wasn't moving. And the room they planned to welcome me into was a windowless basement bedroom beside their furnace. I didn't comment on the post. I didn't call screaming. I simply took a screenshot, turned off my phone, and made one decision. Thanksgiving was 3 days away. For the first time in my life, I was going to stop explaining myself to people who had already decided I didn't get a vote. My name is Walter Hayes. I'm 69 years old, and I live outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in a modest 2-story house my wife, Diane, and I bought in 1991. It has gray siding, a narrow porch, a maple tree in the front yard, and a kitchen floor that has needed replacing since Barack Obama's first term. I know because Diane reminded me every spring. Walter, that floor is older than our grandchildren. I always said, it still works. She'd roll her eyes. So does a rotary phone. That was Diane. She could make fun of me without ever making me feel small. We were married 38 years. Then ovarian cancer took her 6 years ago. People tell you grief gets easier. I'm not sure that's the right word. It gets quieter. In the beginning, grief is a fire alarm. It follows you from room to room. Years later, it becomes more like a clock ticking in another room. Most of the day you don't hear it, but every now and then the whole house becomes still, and there it is again. We had 2 children. Our son Mark was 41. Our daughter Jenna was 38. Mark lived 15 minutes away with his wife, Rachel, and their kids, Lily and Noah. Jenna lived in Nashville with her husband and worked as an occupational therapist. She called often, visited when she could, but Pittsburgh winters and Tennessee school schedules meant we saw each other maybe 4 or 5 times a year. Mark was a local child, which meant after Diane died, he naturally became more involved in my day-to-day life. At first, I appreciated it. He brought dinner over. He shoveled my driveway after heavy snow. Rachel scheduled family dinners so I wouldn't sit alone on holidays. The grandchildren slept over. For a while, their involvement saved me. I mean that sincerely. There are nights after losing a spouse when an empty house doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like evidence. Every silent room reminds you someone used to live there. When Lily left crayons on my coffee table, or Noah abandoned his sneakers in the hallway, the mess felt like proof that life still came through my front door. So when Mark started saying, "Dad, let me handle that," I usually let him. The first thing was my phone. "You need a newer one," he said. "This thing belongs in a museum." He transferred everything, set up passwords, connected my email, installed banking apps, and turned on location sharing. In case something happens. Reasonable. Then Rachel helped me set up automatic payments. No more worrying about stamps or due dates. Reasonable. Mark added himself as an emergency contact with my bank. Reasonable. Rachel started ordering my prescriptions through an app. Reasonable. That's the problem with losing independence. Nobody walks into your house carrying a box labeled control. They bring convenience. They bring concern. They say, "Let me make this easier." And if you love them, sometimes you don't notice that easier has slowly started meaning without asking you. About a year after Diane died, I retired from managing maintenance operations for the county school district. I had worked there 36 years. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't struggling. Diane had been a dental hygienist. We saved. The mortgage was paid. I had a pension, Social Security, a modest retirement account, and more than enough to live comfortably if I didn't suddenly develop a passion for yachts. I didn't discuss money with Mark because there was no reason to. He knew the house was paid off. He knew I was fine. Rachel, however, liked talking about finances. She worked in medical office administration and approached life like every problem needed a spreadsheet. At first, I admired that. She organized family vacations, tracked everyone's birthdays, remembered which child needed which form signed for school. She was useful, efficient, organized. But Rachel also had a habit of turning opinions into plans before anybody realized there had been a discussion. One Easter, she said, "Walter, you should really stop climbing ladders." By Memorial Day, Mark was cleaning my gutters because Rachel had taken my ladder home. One Christmas, she said, "You don't need to be driving after dark anymore." By February, Mark had started offering to pick me up for every family dinner after 5. Nobody ever said I was forbidden from driving. They simply made acting independently feel irresponsible. If I pushed back, Rachel used the same sentence. "We're only worried because we love you." How do you argue with that without sounding ungrateful? The first time I did, Mark looked genuinely hurt. It happened after he found out I had driven to Cleveland for a Pirates memorabilia show with my old coworker Eddie. "You drove all the way to Cleveland?" "That's usually how people get there." "Dad, that's almost 2 hours." "I know, I was present for the drive." Rachel sighed. "Walter, nobody's saying you can't do things. Good. We're saying you need to tell somebody." "Why?" "In case something happens." "What happens if something happens to you?" She frowned. "That's different. Because you're 40? Because we have people depending on us." That one hurt more than she intended. I looked toward Lily and Noah playing in the family room. "Nobody depends on me anymore?" Rachel immediately backtracked. "That's not what I meant." Mark said, "Dad, don't twist this." I let it go. That was my mistake for a long time. I let things go because I didn't want every family meal turning into an argument. Diane had been the confrontational one. Not cruel, just direct. If something bothered her, she said it before resentment had time to decorate a guest room and move in permanently. I was different. I avoided uncomfortable conversations until they became unavoidable. After she died, there was no one beside me saying, "Walter, stop pretending that doesn't bother you." So I became very good at pretending. The next change involved groceries. Rachel noticed I bought frozen dinners sometimes. "Those are terrible for your blood pressure." "I've been eating salt since Eisenhower." She didn't laugh. The following week, groceries began appearing on my porch. Healthy cereal, low-sodium soup, chicken breasts, yogurt I would not have willingly purchased under any circumstances. I called her. "Did you order this?" "Yes. Isn't that easier?" "I already shop for myself." "I know, but this saves you a trip." "I like the trip." Silence. Then that familiar tone. "Walter, I'm trying to help." So I thanked her. I ate the yogurt. It tasted like wall paste. A few months later, Mark asked for a spare house key. That made sense. Emergencies. Then Rachel had one too. Then one Saturday I came home from lunch and found them inside my bedroom. Rachel was pulling clothes from my closet while Mark stood beside 2 black trash bags. "What are you doing?" They both turned. Rachel smiled too quickly. "Surprise." "What surprise?" "We're helping you declutter." I stared at a pile of my shirts on the bed. "Those aren't clutter. Some of these are 20 years old." She held up a flannel shirt Diane had bought me during a trip to Vermont. "This thing has a hole." "Put it down." Something in my voice made her stop. Mark stepped forward. "Dad, relax." "I am relaxed." "Put my clothes back." Rachel's face hardened. "We've spent all morning helping you." "I didn't ask you to." There it was. A sentence that changed the room. Mark looked offended. Rachel looked insulted. "We were doing something nice. The next time, ask me whether I want it." Rachel dropped the shirt onto the bed. "Fine." She walked past me. Mark followed. But before leaving, he said, "You don't have to make everything difficult." I stood in my bedroom holding that old flannel shirt and wondered how protecting my own closet had become difficult. I changed the locks the following week. I didn't tell them. Not as punishment, I simply wanted control over who entered my house. Mark discovered it when he tried to stop by while I was at the hardware store. He called me immediately. Did you change the locks? Yes. Why? Old locks. My key doesn't work. Correct. Silence. Are you giving me a new one? I'll keep one with Eddie in case of emergency. Another silence. Why, Eddie? He lives 2 houses down. Mark sounded wounded. I'm your son. And Eddie lives 2 houses down. You don't trust me? That question was unfair because the answer was complicated. This isn't about trust. Then what is it? My house. Mark hung up angry. Rachel didn't speak to me for almost a week. Then Lily had a school concert and suddenly everyone acted normal. Families are talented at pretending unresolved problems disappeared because there are cupcakes in the room. Over the next year, the tension grew. Mark began commenting on my memory. Nothing serious had happened. I once forgot whether Lily's soccer game was Saturday or Sunday. Another time, I couldn't remember the name of a restaurant we had visited. One afternoon, I called Mark twice because I forgot we had already spoken that morning. That became evidence. Dad, you asked me that already. Did I? Yes. All right. Do you remember calling me? I laughed. Mark, forgetting one phone call doesn't mean I'm wandering around downtown wearing my underwear over my pants. He didn't laugh. He started watching me differently. That bothered me more than anything. I could see him evaluating me. Every pause became suspicious. Every misplaced pair of glasses meant something. Every normal mistake became part of a story about decline. Rachel leaned into it harder. At Thanksgiving the year before everything exploded, I reached for the turkey carving knife. She said, "Maybe Mark should do that." I looked at her. Why? That knife is really sharp. That's generally how carving knives work. Nobody laughed. Mark took the knife. I let him. At Christmas, I offered to drive Lily home from my house. Rachel said, "We'll get her. It's 10 minutes. Roads might freeze." It was 43 degrees. I let them. Every time I surrendered something small, the next surrender became easier for them to request. By spring, Rachel started talking about my house. This place is a lot for one person. Not really. 3 bedrooms. 2 are usually empty. Exactly. That doesn't make them dangerous. She smiled. I'm just saying you could free up a lot of money. For what? Travel. Enjoy life. I enjoy this house. You think you do because it's familiar. I stared at her. I think I do because I live here. Mark jumped in. Nobody's forcing anything. That phrase should make every older parent nervous. Nobody's forcing anything usually means somebody is thinking about it. The following month, Rachel showed me photographs of an active senior apartment complex 20 minutes away. Pool, fitness center, movie room, organized outings. This place is beautiful. It is. You could have people around all the time. I have people around. People your age. I know people my age. You know what I mean. I did. She meant people who belonged in the same category she had started putting me in. Elderly. Managed. Simplified. Safe. I handed the brochure back. I'm not interested. She smiled, but her eyes changed. Just keep an open mind. I threw the brochure away after they left. 2 weeks later, another one appeared in my mailbox. Then Mark asked, "Did you look at that place?" No. Rachel said she sent you information. I told her no. He looked irritated. You could at least consider it. I did. No. Dad, why are you so stubborn? Because apparently saying no once is no longer enough. That argument ended badly. Mark didn't call for 6 days. On the 7th, he sent Lily over with cookies. He knew my weakness. I hugged my granddaughter and never mentioned any of it. Then came the money. One morning at the gas station, my credit card declined. I thought nothing of it. Fraud alert, probably. I used another card. A week later, Mark asked casually, "How much are you putting on credit cards each month?" Why? Just wondering. Not much. Rachel noticed a lot of small charges. My stomach tightened. How would Rachel know? He froze. Because you gave us access when we set everything up. I gave you access to help me set up online banking. Right. Not to monitor what I buy. Nobody's monitoring. You just mentioned my purchases. Dad, you're getting defensive. I hung up. That evening, I logged into my banking app and changed my password. Or tried to. The security code went to Mark's phone. That was the first moment I felt real fear. Not because I thought my son was stealing. I didn't. It was the realization that pieces of my life had quietly been rerouted through someone else. I called Mark. Why does my banking code go to your phone? Because I changed the security number. When? Months ago. Why? You kept having trouble logging in. Twice. Exactly. Change it back. He sighed. Dad, can we do this tomorrow? No. Change it back tonight. Rachel took the phone. Walter, there's no reason to get upset. I want my number attached to my bank account. It's safer this way. Safer for whom? Silence. Then she said, this attitude is exactly what worries us. I remember sitting at my kitchen table after that call, staring at the chair where Diane used to sit. I imagined telling her everything. She would have been furious. Not loud at first. Diane got quieter when she was truly angry. She would have said, why did you let it get this far? And I wouldn't have had a good answer. The truth was embarrassing. I had let it happen because I was afraid of becoming the difficult old man. I had spent years watching older relatives resist every suggestion their children made. I didn't want to be that. I wanted to be flexible, grateful, easy to help. Somewhere along the way, I confused being cooperative with surrendering authority. The next morning, I went to my bank in person. I knew the assistant manager, Carla, from church. She helped me restore my phone number, my email, and my login information. She asked whether anybody else should remain authorized to receive account alerts. No. Are you sure? Completely. There was no investigation, no dramatic fraud department, no police. I didn't want that. Nothing had been stolen. The danger wasn't theft. It was entitlement. Mark and Rachel had become so convinced they were responsible for me that my consent had become a technicality. I removed their access and went home. I didn't tell them immediately. For about 3 weeks, life returned to normal. Then Tuesday morning happened. I stopped for coffee before volunteering at the food pantry. My card declined. Then my second card declined. Outside, I called Mark. My cards don't work, he sighed. Not surprised. Yeah, we turned them off. My entire body went cold. You did what? Just temporarily. Why? Dad, you spent almost $900 last week. I bought new tires. Exactly. My truck needed tires. You didn't discuss it with us. I laughed because the alternative was shouting, why would I discuss buying tires for my truck with you? Because $900 is a lot of money. My money. Silence. Then Rachel's voice came through the speaker. Walter. Nobody's saying it isn't. Then turn my cards back on. We think you need a cooling off period. I actually looked at my phone to make sure I heard correctly. A what? Just a few days where major spending goes through Mark. I was buying coffee. You know what I mean. No, I don't think I do. Mark took the phone again. Dad, calm down. I am calm. We're worried. You keep using that word like it erases the part where you did this without asking me. You're 69, correct. You've been making impulsive decisions. New tires are impulsive? You also bought a grill. I stared across the parking lot. For $229. You already had a grill. It rusted through. You could have asked me first. There it was. Permission, finally said out loud. I asked, do I need permission to buy things now? Mark didn't answer immediately. Rachel did. Not permission, just communication. Turn my cards back on. We'll talk tonight. No. Turn them back on. Mark's voice hardened. Dad, this is why we're concerned. I ended the call. I drove straight to the bank and had every card replaced. New numbers, new passwords. Nobody else attached. It took 40 minutes. The woman helping me asked if I wanted a trusted contact on the account. I thought about Mark. Then I thought about Jenna in Nashville. My daughter. I gave her Jenna's number. Not because Jenna was somehow better, because she had never once made a decision for me without asking. I called Jenna from the parking lot. I told her everything. There was silence for several seconds. Then she said, they did what? Turned off the cards. Dad, that is insane. Hearing somebody call it insane felt like oxygen. Apparently, I'm irresponsible because I bought tires. You needed tires. Thank you. Why didn't you tell me this was happening? I stared through the windshield. Because I didn't want to turn you against your brother. Dad, telling me what happened isn't turning me against anyone. Diane would have said the same thing. Jenna flew up the following weekend. She did not confront Mark. I asked her not to. Instead, she stayed with me, went through my phone, helped me update every password, and made a list of accounts. Not because she took over, Because she sat beside me and asked, "What do you want to change?" Every decision remained mine. That difference was enormous. On Sunday morning, she asked, "Do you want Mark to have a key to the house?" "No." "Okay. Do you think that's harsh?" "It doesn't matter what I think." I looked at her. "You really are your mother's daughter." She smiled. "That was the nicest thing you could have said." After Jenna flew home, Mark came over furious. "You removed me from the bank account." "Yes." "Why?" "Because I'm managing my own money." "After everything we've done for you?" There it was. Not love. Accounting. I stood in the kitchen and listened. "We set up your bills. We check on you. Rachel orders groceries. I handle the yard when you need it. We've rearranged our lives around you." I stared at him. "I never asked you to rearrange your life." His face changed. "Wow. Mark." "No, that's great. Good to know." "You're missing my point." "No, Dad, you're missing mine. We've been carrying you since Mom died." "Carrying me?" I felt that sentence physically. "Is that what you think?" He sighed. "You know what I mean." "No, tell me." "You were a mess after Mom. I was grieving. You needed us." "Yes. And now every time we try to help, you act like we're controlling you." "Because sometimes you are." He laughed bitterly. "Fine. Handle everything yourself." "That's what I'm asking." He walked out. I didn't chase him. That was one of the hardest things I had ever done. For 3 weeks, Mark barely called. I didn't see the grandchildren. Rachel stopped sending photographs to the family group chat. At church, people asked if everything was okay. I said yes because I still didn't want strangers inside our family conflict. Then I discovered the truck. I went outside one morning and found a white envelope tucked beneath my windshield wiper. Inside was an offer from a local dealership with my truck's VIN and estimated trade-in value. I hadn't requested it. I called the dealership. The salesman said, "Your son stopped by last week. Said you were thinking about downsizing to something easier." I thanked him and hung up. My hands shook. That evening, Mark called. I didn't mention the dealership. I wanted to hear him explain it himself. He didn't. Instead, he said, "Rachel and I have been talking." "I'm sure. Thanksgiving is at our place this year." "Okay, we want everyone there. Jenna too." "Good." Then his voice softened. "Dad, I know things have been tense." They have. "Maybe we can reset." I wanted to believe him. God help me, I did. "I'd like that." "Good." A pause. "Also, don't worry about bringing anything. We're handling dinner." I smiled faintly. "Rachel doesn't trust my sweet potatoes?" He laughed. For a moment, he sounded like my son again. "Bring the sweet potatoes." When we hung up, I felt hopeful. That hope lasted 4 days. Monday evening, Eddie from 2 houses down knocked on my door. "You selling?" "Selling what?" "The house." I stared at him. "Why would you ask that?" "Some woman came by today taking pictures from the curb." "What woman?" "Realtor. Said she was doing preliminary stuff for the family." My stomach dropped. "Did she say who called her?" Eddie immediately looked uncomfortable. "Walter." "Who?" "Mark." I closed the door gently after Eddie left and stood in my living room alone. For years, I had believed rage was loud. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes anger makes everything unbelievably clear. I called Mark. "Did you contact a realtor about my house?" Silence. "Who told you?" "That isn't an answer." "Dad, we were only gathering information." "About selling my house." "About options." My option was already no. Rachel took the phone. "Walter, please don't blow this up. You sent a realtor to photograph my house. From the street. That is not the reassuring detail you think it is. We're trying to prepare." "For what?" Another pause. Then Rachel said, "Eventually you'll need more support. Eventually I'll die. Are you pricing the casket too?" "That's disgusting." "So is planning the sale of somebody's home while they still live in it." Mark came back on. "Dad, you're being dramatic. Cancel whatever you're doing. Nothing is happening." "Then cancel nothing." I hung up. Tuesday morning, I called the realtor and told her clearly the house was not for sale. She apologized. She sounded embarrassed. "Your son said the family had agreed." The family did not include the homeowner. That should have been the end. Instead, Wednesday night, Facebook showed me the truth. Rachel had posted photographs from the previous weekend. Mark and Rachel smiling in their basement. Lily holding paint samples. Noah pointing at a newly cleared bedroom. Caption, "Making room for Grandpa? Family takes care of family. Big changes after the holidays. So thankful we can give Walter a safer, simpler chapter close to the grandkids. There were 43 likes. Comments underneath made my skin crawl. You guys are amazing. He's so lucky to have you. This is what family is about. Such wonderful children. One woman wrote, selling the old family home will be emotional, but this is definitely best. Rachel had replied with a heart. I sat alone at my kitchen table, staring at strangers congratulating my children for a sacrifice I had never requested. That was when something inside me stopped hurting and became calm. I took a screenshot. Then I called Jenna. Have you seen Facebook? I'm looking at it right now. She sounded furious. Dad, tell me you didn't agree to this. I didn't. I'm calling Mark. No, Dad. No. Come for Thanksgiving like you planned. What are you going to do? I looked around my kitchen. Diane's old ceramic turkey sat on the windowsill. The refrigerator held photographs of grandchildren, dentist reminders, a faded magnet from Myrtle Beach. I'm going to have dinner. Thanksgiving morning, I woke at 6. I made Diane sweet potatoes, brown sugar, pecans, too much butter. Exactly how she made them. I ironed a blue shirt, put on the watch she gave me for our 30th anniversary, and drove to Mark's house at 2. My new credit card worked just fine when I stopped for flowers on the way. Rachel greeted me like nothing was wrong. Walter, happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. She hugged me. I let her. Mark came from the kitchen carrying a carving knife. Hey, Dad. Son. He seemed nervous. Maybe he expected a confrontation at the door. I gave him none. Jenna had arrived earlier. She hugged me tightly and whispered, You okay? Perfect. That scares me. The house was full. Rachel's parents, her sister, Mark's best friend and his wife, my grandchildren, 2 cousins, 20 people total. Football played in the den. Wine opened. Children ran through the hallway. The normality felt surreal. On the basement door hung a handwritten sign from Lily. Grandpa's room. My heart broke because she didn't know. She had drawn little stars around the words. I went downstairs alone. The room had fresh beige paint, a twin bed, small dresser, television mounted on the wall, no windows. On the nightstand was a framed photograph of Diane and me that had been taken from my house. I picked it up. They had already started moving me in. Mark appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Dad. I turned. He looked guilty. We were going to surprise you. You succeeded. The kids are excited. I can see that. It's just a room. Then why is my wife's picture here? He looked at the floor. Rachel thought it would make it feel like home. My home feels like home. Dad, please. Not today. I set the photograph down. You're right. Not yet. His eyes narrowed. What does that mean? Dinner's getting cold. I walked upstairs. We ate at 4. I sat beside Jenna. Mark sat at the head of the table. Rachel stood before the meal and said, Before we eat, I just want to say how grateful I am that this family is entering such an exciting new season. Jenna closed her eyes. I kept eating. Rachel smiled at me. Especially Walter. This year has reminded us how important it is to take care of the people who took care of us. Everyone murmured warmly. One of Rachel's relatives said, Amen. I looked at Mark. He stared at his plate. Rachel continued, After the holidays, we'll have some transitions. But I know change can be beautiful when it comes from love. I put down my fork. Jenna whispered, Dad. I touched her wrist. Rachel finished her little speech and everybody began eating again. 10 minutes later, Mark's father-in-law said, Walter, you must be excited to get out from under all that house maintenance. The table quieted slightly. Rachel answered for me. He will be once the adjustment period is over. I looked at her. Will I? She smiled nervously. You know what I mean. I'm not sure I do, Mark said quietly. Dad. I looked around the table. Actually, since everyone seems to know about my move, maybe this is a good time to talk about it. Rachel's smile disappeared. Mark set down his fork. Can we do this later? You announced it publicly. That was just family news. To Facebook. One of Rachel's cousins suddenly became very interested in mashed potatoes. I continued calmly. I want to clear up one small misunderstanding. Rachel crossed her arms. Walter, don't embarrass yourself. Jenna's head snapped toward her. I held up a hand before she could speak. I'm not moving here. Complete silence. Lily looked confused. But Grandpa, we made your room. I turned to her. And it's beautiful, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong. Rachel said, Walter, we've already discussed this. No, you discussed it. I said no. Mark's face flushed. We haven't decided anything final. You contacted a realtor. Rachel froze. Mark stared at me. How did you? The realtor came to my house. Someone at the far end of the table whispered, Oh my God, I continued. You asked a dealership what my truck was worth. Mark looked down. You turned off my credit cards, Rachel said quickly. For his protection. I nodded. You changed my bank contact information. Because he forgets passwords, she told the table. Twice, I said. I forgot a password twice. Rachel's mother shifted uncomfortably. Mark said, Dad, nobody's trying to hurt you. I know. That surprised him. That's what makes this so important. I looked around the table. I don't think my son is trying to steal my house. I don't think Rachel wants my money. I think they've convinced themselves that loving me gives them the right to manage me. Nobody spoke. And every time I object, I become stubborn, difficult, confused, emotional. Rachel shook her head. That's not fair. You told me not to embarrass myself 30 seconds ago. Her face went red. I looked at Mark. When did you decide I couldn't buy my own tires? That isn't what happened. You canceled the card because I bought tires without asking you. We were concerned about spending. I have no debt. That's not the point. Then what is? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I asked, when did you decide I couldn't drive? We never said that. You told me you were picking up my truck. Because we thought, exactly. I leaned forward. You thought, you decided, you planned, you told people. But somewhere along the way, nobody asked. Lily started crying quietly. That hurt. I immediately softened my voice. Sweetheart, nobody is angry with you. Rachel said, Look what you're doing to the children. I turned toward her. No. Look what you involved the children in. Silence. You built them a story where Grandpa was coming to live here. You let Lily paint a sign. You put my wife's photograph downstairs. You made my grandchildren emotionally invested in a decision I never made. Rachel's face changed. For the first time, she seemed unsure. Mark whispered, We thought once you saw the room. I stared at him. You thought I'd feel too guilty to say no. He closed his eyes. There it was. He knew. Jenna finally spoke. Mark, what the hell happened to you? Stay out of this. I'm his daughter. You live 600 miles away. You have no idea what it's like dealing with everything here. My chest tightened. Dealing with me? Mark rubbed his forehead. That's not what I meant. You keep saying that. He looked at me frustrated. Dad, you were destroyed after Mom died. Yes? You stopped cooking. You forgot appointments. You barely left the house. For 6 months. We had to check on you constantly. You chose to. Because we love you. His voice cracked. Finally, the real emotion entered the room. I was terrified something would happen to you. Every time you didn't answer the phone, I thought I'd find you on the floor. Every time you drove somewhere, I worried. Every time you mentioned being tired, I thought something was wrong. Mom died so fast, Dad. 1 minute she was here and then she wasn't. His eyes filled. I had not expected tears. Neither had he. I couldn't do that again. The table softened. Even my anger did. But understanding someone's fear does not require surrendering to it. Mark, I said quietly. I understand. He wiped his face. Then why are you fighting us? Because your fear cannot become my prison. He looked at me. I continued. You lost your mother. I lost my wife. We both got scared. But I am still alive. My voice shook now. Do you understand that? I am not a problem left behind by her death. I am a person. Rachel started crying too. Nobody thinks you're a problem. You turned my independence into a family project. She shook her head. I thought we were helping. I know. My grandfather had dementia. There it was. My mother waited too long to step in. By the time she did, he had lost thousands of dollars and almost burned down his kitchen. Rachel wiped her face. I promised myself I would never let that happen to someone I loved. I nodded. And you decided my future based on his past? She looked down. Maybe? Have I been diagnosed with dementia? No. Do I miss appointments regularly? No. Have I gotten lost? No. Have I started paying bills? No. Then what exactly were you protecting me from? She whispered, what might happen? That sentence broke open the entire conflict. I looked around the table. All of us have things that might happen. Mark could have a heart attack at 41. Jenna could get hit by a car tomorrow. Rachel could lose her job. Lily could become sick. We don't take control of someone's life because we're afraid of the future. Nobody spoke. Then I reached into my pocket and placed 3 things beside my plate. My house key, my truck key, my new credit card. These belong to me. Mark stared. Dad. I changed my banking passwords. My cards have new numbers. Nobody else receives alerts. Rachel's face fell. I removed the family tracking app from my phone. What if something happens? Mark asked. Then I call you. And if you can't? Jenna is my emergency contact. Eddie has a house key. Mark looked hurt. Eddie? He lives 2 houses away. A few people almost smiled. I continued. And tomorrow, I'm taking the framed photograph of your mother out of that basement. Mark nodded slowly. Okay. I'm also keeping my truck. Okay. And my house is not for sale. Longer pause. Okay, Rachel whispered. What about all the work we did downstairs? I looked at her. You have a very nice guest room. Jenna covered a laugh with her napkin. I wasn't finished. There's one more thing. Mark looked exhausted. What? For the next few months, I'm stepping back. His expression changed. From us? From the way things have been. What does that mean? It means no more Sunday dinner by default. Invite me. I may come, I may not. Rachel looked shocked. But the kids can call me, visit me, sleep over if their parents are comfortable. I am not punishing Lily or Noah. I looked at Mark. But I'm done proving I love this family by surrendering decisions. His eyes filled again. Dad, please don't cut us off. I'm not cutting you off. I swallowed. I'm cutting off the version of our relationship where you only feel safe if you're in charge. For a long time, nobody spoke. Then Lily climbed down from her chair and came around the table. She wrapped both arms around me. Grandpa? Yeah? Can you still come to my Christmas play? My throat closed. Try stopping me. She smiled. That was the moment I almost cried. Not because everything was fixed, because boundaries are frightening when you've spent years believing they automatically mean abandonment. I needed my grandchildren to understand that saying no to their parents did not mean saying no to them. Dinner resumed eventually. Awkwardly, Rachel's mother asked for more stuffing. Somebody turned the football game louder. Mark barely ate. I left before dessert. Not dramatically. I packed my sweet potato dish, hugged Lily and Noah, thanked Rachel for dinner, and put on my coat. Mark followed me onto the porch. Cold November air filled my lungs. Dad, I turned. I really thought we were helping. I know. That somehow makes me feel worse. Good intentions don't make you a bad person. He nodded. But they also don't make every action good. He stared at the driveway. I don't know how to fix this. Stop trying to fix me. He looked up. Then what do I do? Ask. Ask what? Anything. I opened my truck door. Ask whether I need help. Ask whether I want advice. Ask whether I'm coming to dinner. Ask before you make decisions involving my life. He gave a broken little laugh. That simple? Simple isn't the same as easy. I drove home under a sky threatening snow. When I entered the house, everything was exactly where I'd left it. My recliner, Diane's sewing basket in the corner, the old kitchen floor, my ridiculous collection of coffee mugs. I stood in the hallway and experienced something I had not felt in months. Relief. The house wasn't impressive, but every object inside it existed where I had chosen to put it. Freedom can look very ordinary when someone has been taking it from you 1 inch at a time. The next morning, Facebook was different. Rachel had deleted the moving announcement. She replaced it with nothing. No vague inspirational quote, no explanation. I respected that. Mark did not call for 4 days. On the 5th, my phone rang. Hey, Dad. Hey, can I ask you something? I smiled. That's a promising start. He laughed nervously. Lily wants to bake cookies at your house Saturday. Would that be okay? Absolutely. Do you want us to stay? I thought about it. You can drop the kids off. Silence. Then, okay. No guilt, no argument. Saturday morning, he pulled into my driveway. He did not come inside until I invited him. That detail nearly broke my heart. Growth sometimes looks ridiculously small from the outside. Mark stood in the kitchen while Lily unpacked chocolate chips. Need anything? he asked. My old instinct was to say no. Then I realized boundaries do not mean refusing help just to prove you can. Actually, the bag of flour is on the top shelf. Grab it for me. He smiled. Got it. That became our new language. Need anything? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Both answers were allowed. Rachel took longer. For nearly a month, every conversation felt careful. Then she asked me to lunch. Just us. We met at a diner near my house. She arrived early and already had coffee waiting. I owe you an apology. I waited. She took a breath. Not one of those apologies where I explained for 20 minutes why I was technically right. I almost smiled. Those are my favorite. I know, her eyes filled. I was wrong. I said nothing. I convinced myself that because something could happen to you, I was justified preparing for it without you. I told myself every decision was temporary. The banking, the driving, the house. But, she stared at her coffee, every time you resisted, instead of asking whether I was crossing a line, I used your resistance as evidence that you needed more help. That was exactly it. I'm sorry. Thank you. Do you forgive me? I thought carefully. I'm working on it. She nodded. No pressure. No wounded expression. That's fair. Then she reached into her purse and handed me a small envelope. Inside was my old spare house key. Mark found it in our junk drawer. I turned it over in my hand. You can throw it away. You don't want it? Not unless you decide you do. I slipped it into my pocket. Good answer. Christmas came. I did not spend Christmas Eve at Mark's. I drove to Nashville and spent it with Jenna for the first time in 8 years. When I told Mark, his face fell for half a second. Then he said, have fun. No guilt. No. What about the kids? No reminder of tradition. On Christmas morning, Lily and Noah video called me while opening presents. We laughed. I watched Mark in the background carrying coffee. He waved. I waved back. Nothing broke. That was important. Families sometimes act as though changing a tradition means destroying the relationship. It doesn't. A healthy relationship survives people making choices you did not prefer. In January, I joined Eddie on a 2-week road trip to South Carolina. Mark asked for my itinerary. I gave him the hotel names because that felt reasonable. Rachel asked whether I wanted location sharing turned on. I said no. She said, okay. I almost looked around for hidden cameras. At 70, I celebrated my birthday at my own house. Mark grilled steaks. Rachel brought a cake. Jenna flew in. Before dinner, Mark gave me a small box. Inside was a new keychain. Engraved on one side were the words, your keys, your call. I laughed for 5 minutes. This is either very sweet or very sarcastic. Both. Then he became serious. Dad, I'm sorry I treated your age like a deadline. A deadline for what? For becoming someone else. I looked at him. I kept thinking there would be this moment when you stopped being the dad who knew everything and became an old man who needed me to know everything. He swallowed. I don't think that moment works the way I imagine. Hopefully not. Someday you may need help. Probably. What do you want me to do then? That question meant more than every apology. Ask me while I can still answer. He nodded. And if someday you truly can't? Rachel asked softly. I looked toward Diane's photograph on the mantel. Then remember the man I was before that day. Don't reduce me to the worst version of my health. Rachel wiped at one eye. Deal. Almost a year after the grocery store incident, I went back to the same supermarket on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Same frozen turkeys. Same terrible seasonal music. I put a 22-pound bird in my cart even though Jenna had specifically told me 18 pounds was enough. Some rebellions are harmless. At checkout, the young cashier rang everything up. That'll be $67.42. I inserted my card. Approved. One quiet beep. It shouldn't have meant anything. It meant everything. I carried my groceries to my truck and found a text from Mark. Morning, Dad. Do you want me to pick you up for Thanksgiving tomorrow? Or are you driving yourself? I smiled. I typed, driving myself. 3 dots appeared. Sounds good. Need anything? I looked at the turkey in my cart. More oven space. He replied, can't help you there. Thanksgiving that year was at my house, my choice. Not because I needed to reclaim some throne, because I wanted to cook. Rachel asked before rearranging anything in my kitchen. Mark carved the turkey. I let him because I wanted him to. Not because anyone thought the knife was too dangerous for me. Lily placed a handwritten card beside my plate. Grandpa head of his own table. I told her it was overly dramatic. She said she got that from her mother. Rachel threw a dinner roll at her. Everyone laughed. After dessert, Mark helped me carry dishes into the kitchen. He looked toward the old floor. You know, this thing really does need replacing. Your mother said that for 15 years. Want me to help? I looked at him. Ask me again in spring. He smiled. Fair enough. Later, after everyone left, I sat alone in the living room. Diane's photograph rested beside me. I thought about how close our family had come to something uglier. Not because anyone wanted to hurt me, because love mixed with fear had slowly become entitlement. That is what frightened me most. The people who control you are not always obvious villains. Sometimes they are frightened sons. Over-organized daughters-in-law. Loving relatives who believe concern automatically gives them authority. Sometimes the hardest boundary you will ever set is with someone who genuinely believes they are doing the right thing. And sometimes the hardest truth for an aging parent is admitting that we play a role too. I should have spoken sooner. Every time I smiled and said fine while feeling disrespected, I taught Mark and Rachel that I would eventually accept whatever they decided. Every time I let something small go because I didn't want conflict, I helped build the very pattern I later resented. Self-respect is not only about standing up after someone crosses the line, it is about showing people where the line is before everybody forgets it exists. I don't know what my future holds. Maybe someday I will stop driving. Maybe someday this house really will become too much. Maybe someday I'll need somebody to manage my medication or help me pay bills. Aging is not a moral failure. Needing help is not humiliation. But needing help should not erase the person receiving it. There is a difference between holding somebody's hand and grabbing the steering wheel. A difference between saying, I'm here if you need me, and saying, we've decided what's best. My children had to learn that. So did I. These days, Mark still worries. He probably always will. Last month, I drove to Erie for a fishing trip. He asked me to text when I arrived. I did. That wasn't surrender. That was kindness. Rachel still sends me healthy recipes. I still ignore most of them. She no longer orders groceries unless I ask. Jenna still checks whether I've changed my passwords because apparently she inherited her mother's suspicion that I am technologically hopeless. She is mostly correct. The difference is that now everyone understands something we should have understood all along. Help is an offer, not a takeover. Love is not measured by how much control someone gives you. And getting older does not mean becoming a child in your own family. So let me ask you this, because people still argue about it whenever I tell this story. If you genuinely believed an aging parent might eventually need help, would you start taking control before something went wrong because you were trying to protect them? Or would you wait until they asked, even if that meant accepting the risk that they might make choices you disagreed with?